Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, hello, my name is Sydney. Today we are spending the day in the kitchen going to get a bunch of food prep done. I personally am not the biggest fan of meal prep. I'll do it from time to time, but honestly I don't mind cooking dinner throughout the week. But one thing that has made my life a little bit easier is doing some ingredient prep, and there's also just been a lot of things like pantry staples and snacks that I've been making from scratch a lot recently. So that is what I'm going to share in this video today. Everything that I'm going to be making is gluten and dairy free and refined sugar free. And my husband and I eat this way just for health reasons, but really all that means is that we just focus on whole food ingredients and try to avoid overly processed foods. Hopefully you guys learned something from this video and just feel inspired to spend some time in the kitchen this week. I have a long list of things that I want to make today, so we're gonna get started. Let's get cooking. First things first, I always like to start any type of cooking or baking with a clean kitchen. So I'm just putting some dishes away, and since we don't have a dishwasher in this home, I have to do this quite frequently throughout the day just to keep up with it. And I know it probably doesn't make sense to everybody to clean your kitchen just before getting it dirty again, but for me it just helps me to have a clear mind when I'm in the kitchen, and that's just a rule that I follow in general whenever I'm making anything, to just clean as I go. And especially today, since I'm making several things, I'm just gonna clean in between each thing that we make so that I'm not left with an overwhelming mess at the end of the day. First thing I'm going to make is some homemade almond milk. I've been making almond milk from home for a couple years now, and it's really easy to make. Almond milk is just one of those things that at the store there's a lot of processed and added ingredients that I don't love, and the ones that don't have those extra additives are usually really expensive. So by making it at home, I'm saving money and also just making sure that I use ingredients that are simple and that aren't going to be harmful to my gut. So I start by just soaking some dates in some warm water, and then these almonds have been soaking overnight, and then I just gave them a quick rinse, and then I add those to my Vitamix with the dates and some sea salt and some filtered water. You can also add vanilla to your almond milk if you want it flavored, but I just like it as is, and then I can always flavor it as I'm using it for different things. And then you're just gonna blend that on high with your Vitamix, and then you're going to use a cheesecloth to strain out the pulp. I'll link the one that I use. I just get these off of Amazon, and then I'm just going to strain the milk through the cheesecloth. You can also save the pulp and use it to make different things. I haven't tried that yet, but I'm probably going to figure out something I can use the almond pulp for. And then I'm just pouring that milk back into my Vitamix now, just to use as a vessel to pour into these mason jars. And then I store these in the fridge. They stay good for up to a week. I use these for lattes and just different recipes that call for milk. Next thing I'm making is some homemade ketchup. This is another really easy pantry staple to make from scratch that comes together really quickly on the stovetop, and this is just another thing that I've been making at home recently because a lot of store-bought ketchups have a lot of added processed sugar, and so by making it at home, I'm making it refined sugar free. And this comes together with just some tomato paste, some apple cider vinegar, some white distilled vinegar, honey, and some seasonings. I'll leave all of the measurements and the recipes to everything below. On this day I was doubling the recipe, but I'll leave just the standard recipes to everything in the description if you want to try them out. And then I just add a little bit of water just to get the right texture, and then let that all cook together. And then once everything has combined, I'm just going to add this to a mason jar. And I actually used some that didn't fit in the jar for what I was making for dinner tonight. I was making some barbecue chicken. I used just the homemade ketchup with some coconut aminos and some seasonings, and then I combined that, and then I had the barbecue sauce ready to go for dinner later that night. Next up, I'm making some homemade mayonnaise, and this was one that I was so surprised at how easy it was to make, and it comes together in less than 5 minutes and uses really simple ingredients. By making this at home, I'm able to avoid the store-bought mayonnaise that has a lot of either seed oils like canola oils or just a lot of added ingredients that I don't want to consume. So I make this at home just with some avocado oil and olive oil. The options at the store that do use avocado oil are really expensive. So by making it at home, again, we're saving money. And really the only thing that it's required is to have just this immersion blender. But this one that I have is actually really affordable off of Amazon. I'll link it below. And then I just store this in the refrigerator, and I use the mayonnaise a lot for different bases for sauces and for chicken salad. Next up, I'm making some red pickled onions. This is another thing that I make every so often to use with salads or just with different bowl dinners that I make, and these come together really quickly as well. I just slice a red onion, pour some apple cider vinegar and juice a lemon together, and then I add in some minced garlic and some salt and some peppercorns, but I didn't have peppercorns this day, so I just used some pepper. And then I add that to a small mason jar, and then I add in our sliced onion, kind of separating it as I'm putting it in the jar, and then just pressing it down so that the liquid covers the onions. Give those a good shake, and then I store these in the fridge, and they're pretty much good to eat the next day. Next thing we're making is some cabbage slaw. This is another thing that we've been enjoying on the side of dinners, and also just using in different bowl dinner recipes just for some added texture and fiber. And I start just by slicing up some red cabbage and some green cabbage. And then I realized my bowl wasn't big enough, so I had to put it in a larger bowl just to have room for the other ingredients as well. And then I shredded up some carrot and then added that along with our cabbage. And then you're going to make a dressing for this. I'm using olive oil, but you can also use avocado oil as well. Added in some lemon juice, some apple cider vinegar, some Dijon mustard, and salt and pepper. And then I almost forgot to add in my honey, but I added that in afterwards when I realized I forgot it. And then you just mix that together, add that with your cabbage mixture, and then just combine everything, and then add these to our mason jars. This is something that it will get softer as you let it sit, but it's also really good to enjoy same day as well. But I usually will consume this within a week. And then I just make sure that I seal these really good with the mason jar lids, and then I store this in the refrigerator. Next, I'm going to pre-chop some sweet potatoes to use for different sides throughout the week. So I'm just peeling my sweet potatoes and then chopping them. I try to chop them in about 1-inch cubes, and I'm not super precise, but I do my best to try to be consistent in how I'm cutting them just so that they all cook evenly. And then I'm just going to add these to a freezer safe bag. I'll link the ones that I use below. These ones are reusable. And then I'm also going to roast some of these for dinner tonight. So how I like to make these is just adding them to a bowl and then mixing in some avocado oil with some salt and pepper and some garlic powder. And then I just combine that together, and then I add this to a baking sheet, and I roast these at 400 degrees for about 40 minutes. I'm just gonna show you guys here how we use these throughout the week. So this was another night where I made Mediterranean bowls. So I added the roasted sweet potatoes to the bowl, and then we're also using our cabbage slaw and our red pickled onions. So this shows how we prepared a lot of the ingredients for the bowl ahead of time, and it came together really easily just with some other sides, and these are really good. I'll definitely share the recipe to this at some point. Now I'm moving on to more snack recipes. Granola bars is one thing that I've been making from scratch a lot recently, and they come together really quickly with just a few simple ingredients. I like to use oats and some freeze-dried strawberries. I just kind of roughly chop these before adding them to my bowl, and then I add in some mini chocolate chips. These ones are dairy-free, and then I add just a little bit of sea salt, some honey, some almond butter, and a little bit of vanilla extract, and that's all you need for these granola bars. There's so many different recipes out there, but this one is just so simple. And then I just stir that until it's all combined, and then I add this to a lined baking baking dish and just try to press them down so that it's all evenly distributed, so that when we cut into the bars, they're just pretty consistent in their size. And then I'm just going to store this in the refrigerator for a couple hours and allow it to sit so that when we cut into them, they're nice and firm. And then I'm just cutting them vertically, just the thickness that I want my bars to be in, and then I cut them one way down the middle horizontally. These are ready to enjoy right away, and I'm just storing these back in a container and keeping them in the fridge so that they stay nice and firm. I've also seen people individually wrap these with parchment paper, but I just don't think that's necessary. You can just grab these and go, but if you are eating them on the go, then maybe that's a good option for you. But I did reuse the parchment paper that was lined in the baking sheet just to keep the layers from sticking on top of one another. Next up, I'm also making a batch of baked granola. We really like to enjoy this as snacks or even just a quick breakfast option. And I just start by using my food processor, and I just lightly pulse some pecans with our dates that we soaked earlier, and then just roughly kind of chop that all together. And then I just add that to a bowl, and then I add in some oats, and you can really use whatever combination of seeds and different mix-ins that you want, as long as it's just the same ratio. I really like to add some pumpkin seeds and coconut flakes, and then I add in some maple syrup, some flaxseed, a little bit of vanilla extract, some coconut oil, and almond butter, and then just mix that all together. And then I'm going to add this to a parchment paper lined baking dish, and then you're going to bake this at 325 degrees for about 20 minutes. And this always smells so good when it's being made in the house. And then I'm just going to add this to a bowl just to make it easier to add into my mason jars. And then this is pantry stable, so you can keep it in your pantry, but I'm also going to store the extra one in the fridge just so it has a longer shelf life. And like I said, we really like to enjoy this as a snack. So one way that I've been enjoying this is with some coconut yogurt, and then I add a little bit of granola with some fresh fruit, and this is just a really tasty snack or sweet treat. I've honestly been having this as my sweet treat at night. Last thing I made this day was some banana bread muffins, and I call these banana bread muffins just because it's the same recipe that I used for my banana bread. I just bake them in a muffin tin, and I actually had enough ripe bananas to double the recipe this day, so I did bake half as muffins and then the other half I used to make a banana bread loaf. And so I'm just mashing up our ripe bananas, adding in some egg, vanilla extract, and some melted coconut oil that I've allowed to cool. And then for the flour blend, I use almond flour, coconut flour, and tapioca flour. And again, I'll leave the measurements to everything in the description below if you guys want to try this out. And then adding in some baking soda, some cinnamon, some sea salt, and then mixing that all together. And you can add in whatever mix-ins you like. I really like to add in some chopped walnuts and some mini chocolate chips. Again, these ones that I'm using are dairy-free. And then I'm just dividing this up in our muffin tin and using just some parchment paper liners. You can also use these without the liners as well. Just make sure you spray your muffin tin really good with some avocado oil or some other non-stick oil. And the only difference between the muffins and the banana bread loaf is just the bake time. So they bake for about 20 to 22 minutes as muffins, and then in the loaf it just bakes for about 50 minutes to an hour. Honestly, I feel like loaves take a long time to bake, but you just want to check on it and make sure it's cooked throughout the middle. And I didn't get to show you guys, but I do put these in a freezer bag and just keep them frozen throughout the week and just take them out when we're ready to eat them. That way they stay nice and fresh. And now I'm showing you guys everything that we made today, starting with our almond milk, our granola, our cabbage slaw, our mayonnaise, red pickled onions, ketchup, our sweet potatoes, granola bars, and our muffins and our banana bread. And there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, friends.